Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. So we're going to be walking through the steps for preparing for a successful migration to AWS. As we're going through the presentation, please feel free to jot down any questions you might have in the questions pane. We'll be sure to answer them towards the end of the webinar, and stick with us till the end for a special migration offer in conjunction with AWS. So I'm Scott Goldberg. I'm a senior solutions architect here at Mission. Some things about me is that I'm a cloud architect by trade. So I've have years of experience designing and deploying complex workloads on AWS. I really enjoy automation. So if I have to do it more than once, I'm probably going to write something to do it for me. And in my personal life, I'm a smart home enthusiast. So I've got lots of gadgets, and sort of ties back into the whole automation thing. I've got Ben with me here today. So Ben, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. Good to be here. Ben Schreiner. I lead the migration practice for the US. Been advising CIOs for a couple of decades now, to show my age a little bit, and I think you can tell by the hair, a wannabe rock star. I live in Austin, and home of some really talented folks. So they humble me on a regular basis. So looking forward to sharing some best practices with you. Pleasure to work with Scott again, and we're gonna have a good time.
Awesome. Ben, you're going to share your screen next.
All right. Okay, so let's dive right into it. So this section is all about lessons learned and some of the best practices for migrating to AWS. And we've got a lot of experience. Mission has done a lot of this work, and we've learned a lot over the years. So AWS has been around for a long time and invented the cloud, and this is an opportunity, a transformational opportunity for all of you. Some of you, taking this COVID pandemic as a way to rethink how you do technology. And I think many of us were challenged by the pandemic. It came out of nowhere, and it's really been a shock to the system. So both AWS and Mission are here to help, and we want to make sure that you get everything out of today that we have for you. So my first best practice is know your whys. Know why you're looking at the cloud, or specifically AWS. And there's a lot of reasons. So I talk to customers on a daily basis about these reasons. And the important thing here is having more than one, right? So cost is always a conversation starter, but you can dramatically improve your security or compliance situation. You can consolidate your cost, or consolidate onto one platform if you've grown through mergers and acquisitions. It's a way to increase resiliency if you don't have a great DR strategy, or can't scale to support growth, or can't shrink if that's the case, and reduce your costs because you have all this fixed hardware in a data center. So know your whys is important. You have to have the motivation. These are our whys, right? So AWS's whys when it comes to helping customers with migrations is to deliver agility, to allow you to be able to do more and do it faster than you can in the traditional or legacy IT service delivery model, where you were ordering servers and waiting for them to show up, and then racking them, and then configuring them, and then making them available. And days, weeks, in some cases I've talked to customers, months go by before a project's ready to kick off because of the delays with infrastructure. And now it's a click of a button and you're good to go. Operational efficiency, a lot of time, again, it's just saving time, but also just uptime, right? You don't have things that go down when you have resiliency. And if you're in areas where they have fires or hurricanes, or again, now we're all working from home, the ability to still engage with your infrastructure and be able to take advantage of new capabilities is key. And then again, reducing risk all along the way. We have this idea of stages of adoption. Many of you probably are in the project stage. Maybe you've created a VPC, you've played around with AWS a little bit. Maybe you haven't, and sometimes that's the easiest way to dip your toe in the pool. But then we see folks decide that they want to go to the cloud for one of those 8 or many of those 8 reasons, and that's really where you have to kind of get a foundation of understanding and then start to determine how best to migrate those workloads. So best practice number 2 is follow a proven methodology. AWS over the last decade has created the MAP acceleration program. Keyword is the second word, acceleration. I'm a big fan. And this methodology, again, is a series of best practices and how-tos that AWS Professional Services has developed, and our friends at Mission Cloud have learned and been tested on this approach, and they bring it to life, if you will, for customers. There's a series of tools that either we created over the last decade or bought, or there's a whole bunch of third-party tools that have been added. Our partners, Mission Cloud being a premier partner, has the experience, which is key. Managed services is a way to accelerate, where if you're not familiar with AWS, Mission can operate your AWS environment for you. AWS training, absolutely critical that you and the team get exposed to training and learn how to take advantage. And then there's an investment program associated with it as well. Andy Jassy, our CEO, says this all the time, quoted numerous times, saying that there's no compression algorithm for experience. Couldn't agree more. Which is where best practice number 3 comes into play. Mission is great at this, right? They've helped lots of customers. They have all of these competencies related to AWS, and that top one there, the migration competency, is what we're focused on today. But it shows they have a lot of experience with AWS and with helping customers. And these competencies are no joke. We hold them to a very high bar. We audit every year to make sure that they are delivering value to you, the customer, that they're helping speed up your transformations and reduce risk. And again, Mission continues to deliver time and time again. So a way to move faster and reduce your risk is to work with a partner like Mission. A typical customer journey looks something like this. Maybe it's you get started with a proof of concept of some time, but if you're past the just playing with AWS and you're ready to get serious, that's when we get into the assess phase of the approach. And that is all about creating a case for change. And the way you create a case for change is with data. Amazon and AWS is a data-driven company. We make data-driven decisions, and we want to empower you with the data about your environment and what it might cost if you were on AWS. We've got some tools that help make that assessment. In addition, it can look at your Microsoft licensing and potentially show ways and recommendations for reducing your dependency on Microsoft and reducing your cost structure when you land on AWS. So that's the 5th best practice, is understanding the impact of moving to AWS and the potential savings you could have by changing some of your architecture. 6th best practice is coming in eyes wide open. So we have a Migration Readiness Assessment is a best practice. It was developed again by AWS Professional Services. This workshop is facilitated by the Mission team, and they walk you through 80 questions that are meant to be conversation, thought-provoking. And the goal here across these 6 different pillars, if you will, or slices of your business, is to ask questions to see how ready you are to operate in AWS. And I'll just warn you, nobody gets all green. That's not the goal here. The goal here is really just to shine a light on areas of change that might warrant additional time and consideration during the planning phase. And those could be things simple as changing of job descriptions, because you're going to want to start looking for folks that have different skills perhaps. It could be your procurement process is going to be different, your budgeting process, governance may change, and then of course the technology stack is going to change. So again, a lot of change, and sometimes that can be scary. But the beauty of working with Mission is, they can take, again, some of that risk out. And they can help the people who are involved in this, get rid of some of that anxiety by making sure that they understand what needs to happen, that they know who's going to do what, and then again that they're ready to operate in AWS when this is all done. Working with folks like Mission to develop an achievable plan and sticking to the plan is definitely the 7th best practice, and that comes in our mobilize phase, where you're getting ready for the migration. You analyze the different workloads that you have. You determine how they're going to land in AWS, what's going to change, if anything. You get involved in training and learning more about AWS. So it's a critical part of the process, is really getting a good, strong plan together that can be a phased approach, again, depending on your timelines, but working collaboratively with Mission. They can steer you to AWS, avoiding common pitfalls and making sure that you understand some of the trade-offs that can be made from a performance and cost point of view. Lots of different ways to solve the problem. Which leads us to best practice number 8. This is a great time to consider, improving your architecture. So the fastest way to AWS is just to lift what you have, and as long as we have a supporting OS that matches, you can drop it on AWS, and you're in AWS. And that may save you some money, but it's not taking full advantage of the platform and all that's possible. And that's, again, where Mission does a great job of looking at the R's, the 7 R's here, and your application portfolio, and working with you to determine the right outcome for each of the workloads and the various dependencies that you have. Again, you can look at databases as well, and whether or not you want to move to a managed database or break away from the relational database framework that's been in place for 2 decades, and focus more on purpose-built applications or purpose-built databases like DynamoDB for key value pairs, or Redshift for a data warehouse, things that were built to do very specific things that are just faster and more elegant than the kitchen sink that the relational database has become. So if your database is slowing down progress, this is a great time to look at different ways to handle data. And again, our friends at Mission have a lot of experience with helping folks manage their database transformations. All right, number 9 best practice is making sure your team is ready. I'll tell you, I spent almost a decade with one of the large hardware providers, and I come from the data center world, and I've been at AWS now for a little over a year, and I've learned a ton. And one of the things I want to share with you is I learned that a lot of the skills I had from the data center world transitioned into the cloud world. And it's probably in the 75 to 80% range of things I learned how to do from an architecture point of view, transitioned. There are new things to learn. There are new ways to do things. One of the things you're going to learn real fast is it's just so much faster. One of my first exercises in getting my first certification was to spin up a server, a Linux server, install Apache, and host a website. I did it in probably 5 minutes. And then the next exercise was now spin one up in London and one in Sydney and put all of those behind a load balancer. And I was like, okay, and I went through the exercise. It, again, took maybe another 5 minutes tops. So in 10 minutes, I had 3 web servers around the world, all behind one load balancer, serving the appropriate geography where the requests were coming in. And then I thought for a second just how long that would have taken in the physical world, right? In the world of of data centers and in my old world, and it would have taken months, for sure at least months, and it just would have been painful, instead of just clicking and being done in 10 minutes. So amazing speeds, but you do need to learn to do things a little differently, and that's really what training is all about. Having a plan to train your folks reduces the anxiety around transition. It's great for their job satisfaction because they feel like they're learning something that's relevant, and they're a part of the change in technology that's happening. And quite frankly, the more they learn, the more they're able to innovate, the more they're able to save you money, the better they're able to secure your data and your applications, because they learn how to use all of the automation and capabilities that AWS has to offer. So training is absolutely critical. And then last but not least, we can't ignore, not even for a second, executive alignment, making sure that our executives know exactly what needs to happen, and that they're convinced that this is important, right? And if you don't have that, this assessment can help build buy-in. It can create, again, that case for change, and hopefully get executive alignment. And I just realized that I skipped right past our poll. So what I'm going to do now is ask you to answer our poll, and the poll is about your drivers. So if you would have a look at the poll here and let us know what your drivers are for thinking about moving to the cloud. And you can pick more than one if more than one of these are appropriate, and we'll let you have a little time to do that. I'm seeing increased agility and staff productivity is getting a lot of activity, which absolutely good to see. Digital transformation, I know, means different things to different people, but good to see that on the list. Not surprised that IoT and AIML are a little lower, or zero. That's some pretty advanced stuff, and it really depends on what industry you're in. Looks like our voting has slowed down now, so I appreciate that. I'm glad to see that this you have the motivations that we were looking for. And last but not least is who's ready to get started. And a heartfelt thank you to you for taking the time to hear us today. And I'll turn the mic back over to Scott. Thanks again.
Thanks a lot, Ben. Appreciate having you here as always. Let's have some fun, right? I'm going to share my screen now. All right, well, so I guess before I get started, I just want to remind anyone, questions in the question panel. If you have any, feel free to jot them down. I think we have a few coming in already, but I'll be glad to get those answered towards the end. And then stick around. We have a nice offer in conjunction with the AWS for all of you. So I'm going to be going a bit deeper through Mission's migration process, which is based on AWS's Migration Acceleration Program framework that Ben talked through in a little bit. But first, I wanted to start off with a little information on who Mission is. I know Ben touched on this to an extent, but Mission is an AWS Premier Consulting partner and managed services provider. So what is it that we do? As a partner to AWS, we offer a comprehensive set of services that span your entire cloud journey. From the architect phase, where you're trying to figure out if you're ready for a migration to the cloud, and even if you're already there, what things you should be doing next, through the actual migrations themselves. So we've done many, many migrations to AWS and helped a lot of customers in getting from where they are into the AWS platform. Once you're in the cloud, we can help by managing your environments from 24/7 monitoring and alert response to continuous security and DevOps consulting. And finally, an important thing for anyone on AWS is to really make sure that you're optimized on the platform. We help customers continually evaluate their environments, helping from a cost perspective to ensure that your infrastructure is sized appropriately, but that also your dollars are being spent in the most appropriate way possible. Like we said already, Mission's a premier consulting partner, which is the highest tier partner you can be with AWS. It takes a lot of effort to get that certification, like Ben mentioned, lots of audits, lots of documentation. So we're definitely excited to be one of them. As you can see, Mission has a number of different AWS competencies as well. So meaning that we have been thoroughly vetted by AWS in these different areas, and most importantly for this conversation around migrations, including those of Microsoft Windows workloads. We also have competencies in a few different verticals, including healthcare and life sciences, as well as SaaS applications. So just wanted to go through the kind of the Mission's migration process at a high level. Mission handles customer migrations in a number of different ways, but our preferred migration strategy is to use AWS's Migration Acceleration Program, as it provides us with a structured approach to executing customer migrations. So phase one is to start with what we call an SA on demand. So it's how we start every customer interaction, and it's where we can review your particular use case, do some initial discovery, and answer any questions you might have about the process. It also helps us identify appropriate resources and any AWS programs that might be a good fit for your use case. Next up, the Migration Readiness Assessment, again, that Ben touched on a little bit, is really a consultative workshop that uses AWS's cloud adoption framework to help you better understand your current cloud readiness state and identify any gaps to getting there. In conjunction with the MRA, we also typically get started with a total cost of ownership or TCO analysis. That's our financial modeling process that's really designed to help you make the best choices for your business. We'll work together to get you realistic costs for operating in the cloud to better help you make informed decisions. From there, we move on to the mobilize phase. This is going to be the primary work phase where we build out the AWS infrastructure, execute any necessary proofs of concept, and migrate a number of initial pilot applications, which can then set the stage for the last and final phase, which is migrate and modernize. And that is going to be more of a migration factory style approach to executing on the remainder of your migration. So I'm going to talk through the migration process for a customer aptly named Example Inc. And so just sort of around the customer's objectives, Example Inc.'s a healthcare company that provides time tracking software for about 500 different healthcare entities. They came to Mission looking to consolidate their customers' individual deployments inside of AWS in order to reduce their existing operational and support burdens with the current distributed infrastructure. So they had all these sort of siloed deployments of their application in their customer end user sites, but they were still kind of responsible for supporting and helping manage those. And so migrating to AWS would also allow for several modernization initiatives that would pave the way for development of their future SaaS platform. In terms of the tech stack, their current tech stack consists of an application that's deployed on a single server at each of their customers' locations, and then end users use a VDI-like solution like Windows Terminal Server or Citrix for their sort of end user access to that app. There's no standard deployment methods or tool sets for ongoing monitoring and management of any of the environments. So everything's kind of done on an ad hoc basis. We also work through identifying the key stakeholders who'd be required for the subsequent MRA phase. So that MRA phase really entails that assessment that Ben talked a little bit about. And so it really utilizes an assessment framework built by AWS that's based on their years of expertise in successfully migrating customers to their platform. They even built a nice tool to guide us through this phase. So the MRA consists of about 80 questions, and it's really centered around AWS's expertise of managing customer migrations with the goal of being able to help you identify any gaps to getting there. Some of the things you should be thinking about are what are your internal skill sets for prepping for the migration, managing the migration, and then further operating in the cloud afterwards. How much financial planning have you done already? What are licensing implications, if anything? And how might this migration change the way that you're charging your customers or doing internal budgeting or cost allocation? How about disaster recovery, your business continuity plan, security, patching, backups, all of those types of things are things that we need to think about as they really might change in terms of the process that you're in right now. And then what other improvements or optimizations do you want to achieve during or post-migration? And what are some of your main concerns or risks to having a successful migration? So these are all things that kind of get bubbled up throughout this process. The MRA is generally delivered as a half-day workshop where we're going to work with various executives and key stakeholders across your organization and your cloud center of excellence if you have one. The goal of the workshop is really just to get everyone together and on the same page in order to talk through your objectives and generate insights for informing your internal migration business case and or plan. This way, we can really be sure to get you all the key pieces of information you're going to need moving forward. And this operational information combined with the output of the TCO analysis that we'll go into next should really give you all you need to make an informed decision about your business case and final migration strategy. So the output of the MRA tool consists of various charts and graphs and reporting structure. The goal at the end is to really detail your current cloud readiness and identify those gaps that I mentioned. Some key observations for Example Inc. is that this customer has a solid business case in place. They already have executive sponsorship and sign-off. The entire organization is really already aligned around the migration to AWS, right? There's camaraderie around this. Everyone's prepared for this undertaking. Especially because, like I said, it's going to make a lot of people's lives easier to have one platform to manage all of their end customers in. And that they really also want to get some more detailed migration planning. They know they need to get to AWS, but they really haven't started thinking about the mechanics of how they're going to get there and what's going to happen afterwards. So this graph, which is the sort of cloud adoption framework, those Workstream scores that kind of loosely correlate to those pillars that Ben was talking about. This graph details the various scorings of those 80 questions that roll up into those pillars. So this is one of the easiest views for identifying what areas you might be sufficient in or need improvement in. And you can see here that Example Inc. scored pretty low on resource commitment, design, and service catalog. And this just really goes to show that they need to invest some more time on the migration how, and we can help with that. And a lot of that comes around, sort of like DevOps best practices, cloud best practices, investing in training. Ben talked about that in depth, but that's really one of the biggest things is you're going to be in a new environment. And there's really going to be some upfront work into figuring out how your ongoing operations are going to need to change for that. And then based on the graph from the previous slide, these are sample of some of the recommendations that we made. So it really just reiterates the need to do some more detailed planning and evaluation of some of the AWS native services that might differ from what you're used to either on-prem or in a colo or even another hosting provider. And a lot of these unknowns can and will be fleshed out in the next mobilize phase. I just wanted to spend a minute talking about what the MRA should be used for and what it's not meant to be. I took this slide from one of AWS's decks, and it's really their view about what the MRA is and isn't. And they put this out there because a lot of teams can get hung up on and even competitive about their MRA scores. It's not meant to be about internal finger pointing or rendering judgments. It's designed to help you and us build a plan for migration next steps, as well as addressing any knowledge or operational gaps that might help you move faster and more confidently throughout your migration journey. So we've partnered with CloudChomp for TCO and financial modeling. And there's two main ways to configure data ingestion into the CloudChomp platform. One is that there's a VMware appliance that can ingest historical utilization data straight from vCenter. So we're going to pull in all of that information that's already been captured there and pretty much be ready on day one to be able to start making some recommendations. And then there's also the ability to use an SNMP agent to collect resource utilization data from servers as well as perform application discovery and dependency mapping. So you get a little bit more functionality with the SNMP collection method. Sometimes we do both. It really just depends on what type of insights we're looking for. If we go the SNMP route, we would need to let that run for a small period of time, with the goal being to collect those usage metrics over time to help make the most informed decision. So the most amount of time we can let that run, the better insights we're going to get. And once things are set up in collecting data, there's really not a whole lot to do from there. The VMware integration, like I said, allows us to collect those metrics almost instantly. SMP, once it runs for a few weeks, we're sort of ready to go and analyze the data. And so customers can generally see a 41% average cost savings when migrating to AWS from on-prem data centers, at least that we've been able to identify so far. This is a screenshot of the CloudChomp inventory screen. So one of the biggest benefits to using CloudChomp for TCO analysis is its collaborative design. I've worked with a lot of different products, and I think the ability to have a partner and even just multiple individuals and teams involved in the slicing and dicing of data has been invaluable. Instead of sending multiple spreadsheet versions back and forth, all the stakeholders can edit a live data set while modeling for different scenarios. So you can even see in the dropdown on the right-hand side that there's a number of column headers to work with. You can even create your own custom columns and filters. And the goal of all of this is to enable you to make decisions about your resources to help you plan for both end state costs, as well as get more concrete about migration wave planning and really even migration methodology. I know Ben mentioned those 7 R's before. So this really lets you go through, tag your resources, identify things maybe you're not migrating, maybe things that need to be forklifted over to AWS because you're not sure how to go about rebuilding them, and maybe it was years ago, versus even using AWS managed services and what types of things data needs to be migrated but not the VM itself. So really thinking through what all of those different migration patterns are going to look like, and then even starting to score some of these servers or workloads for migration so that you can at least start getting an idea of what a migration timeline and plan is going to end up with. So in the case of Example Inc., we're able to capture all of their resource utilization data, which certainly varied by customer, and provide them with more accurate depiction of their costs when deploying appropriately sized environments on AWS. So keep in mind that there were so many customer environments to be migrated. CloudChomp allowed us to collaborate together and really determine which customers were going to be migrated, in what order, but also in sort of what fashion. And going through this process up front really makes the subsequent migration phases a lot easier. So here you can see some of the high-level cost analytics that the platform does for you. By entering some assumptions about your current environment, you should be able to get an accurate depiction of your on-prem costs. This is helpful because as you go and filter the data down, your on-prem costs adjust accordingly, allowing you to continue to make apples to apples comparison of costs. So there might be only a subset of servers in your data center that you're going to be migrating, and once you go and filter that down, it's really going to show you the total cost of those servers based on the combination of CPU, RAM, and disk as a percentage of the total. So the second column shows a like-for-like migration to AWS. So this is assuming lift and shift to AWS, provisioning resources exactly as they are today. So exactly the same amounts of CPU, RAM, and disk per server. It's nice to see that even provisioning the same infrastructure, Example Inc. was already running, would net them some substantial savings when making a 1-year reserved instance commitment on the platform. The last column is labeled CC Optimized, CloudChomp Optimized, and that uses CloudChomp's right sizing algorithms to make the best determination of AWS instance type and size based on the captured utilization data. So you can also tune the thresholds yourself if necessary, but you can see that based on the numbers, it's really important to do this utilization assessment, because you will likely be moving from a CapEx model where you need to be pre-provisioned for your worst day of the year in order to get in front of demand, and to an OpEx model, which is going to allow you the flexibility to adjust resources on demand and implement a level of elasticity that I'm sure you didn't necessarily have before. Once we had all this information and Example Inc. received their leadership approval, it was time to move on to the next phase. So moving into the mobilize phase, we'll work together to validate that preliminary architecture design and work to automate the deployment using infrastructure as code. So the goal here is we're doing things like creating VPCs and other networking components. That we're going to create a foundation network deployment in AWS that will sort of serve as the basis for you to hopefully move into. Deploying a number of security and management tool sets, working out those backups, patching, and sort of monitoring tools and processes that we sort of discussed in the MRA phase, building out the migration tooling and automation, and actually migrating some of the identified pilot workloads. So we really want to go through and actually migrate a subset of your total inventory. Hopefully that sort of represents variations in complexity so that we can document what that process looks like, do all ample testing, get those pilot workloads over, and then really have an idea of what needs to happen on subsequent phases. We're going to look at starting to optimize for cost, and that's going to be a lot around actually delivering on that TCO analysis that we did. Training the teams, because still that's big. So we want to help you really understand what operating in the cloud looks like and sort of other DevOps best practices, and then finalizing that migration plan for any remaining migration work. On the right here, you can see is a preliminary architecture diagram for the customer migration process. In an example Inks case, we built out the requisite number of VPCs and subnets for their entire footprint, and then migrated a subset of those machines, allowing us to test and document the process like I mentioned before. Again, the goal here is to create all the necessary automation for migrating customer servers and data, and get things to a place where it's reliable and repeatable, so that we can be ready to migrate the bulk of it in the next phase. So the migrate and modernize phase, being the last phase, really uses that automation and lessons learned from the mobilize phase to deploy the remaining applications and workloads on AWS using a phased migration approach. Also incorporating a number of migration strategies defined in the TCO planning phase, like the lift and shift, rebuild, migrate to managed services, and re-architect or modernize. You might actually retire some of these servers along the way as you find that they're not necessary anymore. It's essentially going to be a migration factory style migration of the remaining workloads in a migrate, validate, cut over fashion until things are completed. So like I said, we should have the bedrock of the infrastructure already completed. And at this point, we're just moving workloads over using one of those Rs that we discussed before. So at the end of this phase, the expectation is that you'll be fully migrated and operating in the cloud with full comfortability around the ongoing operational management. And if not, we can always help with one of our managed services as well. So I wanted to extend a special offer to attendees for a free migration readiness assessment. You can go to the URL missioncloud.com/free-MRA and fill out a form. And on that page, you can also learn more about the MRA process and mission itself. Also, there should be a link in the webinar sidebar where you can download a datasheet, a PDF, that goes over some of what we talked about today, how an MRA works, the benefits of an MRA, and the special free MRA offer with the link to the landing page. And alternatively, you can always reach out to Mission by calling or emailing us, and we'll get back to you with more information as soon as we can. So again, wanted to thank everyone for your time today. I think we have some time for Q&A now, so if you haven't already, please feel free to get those down in the questions sidebar, but I'm gonna take a look at what we have so far. I have one question around, is there anything to be concerned about when migrating my application and refactoring it? Or should I just lift and shift and then refactor post-migration? I imagine that might be a safer route. So that's actually a really good question. And it sort of depends on a number of factors, like what's your timeline for the migration? Do you need to be out of your data center by any particular time, right? Like what's driving your move to the cloud or AWS more specifically? And then really, like, do you have time to do it? Do you have expertise to do it? It's certainly, something that Mission can help with, but it's sometimes it could be safer and easier to move what you have to the cloud, and then once there, and you can shut down your old infrastructure. You're not paying for double the amount of provisioned servers. You can really start working on the sort of optimization and modernization of your environment. So not to say that you shouldn't do it ahead of time. If you can, you have the bandwidth, like that's great. And if you're not running up against any time restrictions, then great. But I've just seen in my experience a lot of times customers they never get to the cloud because there's always something else to build before being able to start that migration process. Oh, can I go back and show the offer slide? So yes, I know I breezed through that relatively quickly. So again, it's, you can go to missioncloud.com/free MRA. Our phone number and email address is at the bottom. So please feel free to reach out. Even if it's not about migration work, like I said before, Mission's a sort of full-fledged AWS managed services provider. So it's likely that we can really help you out in a number of different ways, either pre, during, or post a migration effort. So again, please feel free to reach out with any questions. And I don't see any other questions. There's one more about Microsoft technology. So is there anything special I need to be concerned about when migrating apps that use Microsoft technologies? Not really. The only thing is really around like licensing implications. So that's a whole nother webinar story. But generally when migrating Microsoft workloads, it's really going to be around, what type of licensing do you have already? Do you want to take that with you? What are the repercussions for doing so? Either way, it really comes down to cost analysis, but there shouldn't be any real technical hurdles for migrating Microsoft workloads compared to anything else. And I think that's it for questions. So I appreciate everyone taking the time today. I hope you all learned something. Again, feel free to reach out if you need any help with anything in the future, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.